We're the New Orleans Business Alliance. We are the accredited local economic development organization focused on growing the New Orleans economy. The geography of innovation, the biomedical district, the premise and the promise, and really is a collaborative effort among the New Orleans Business Alliance, our organization, the Greater New Orleans Foundation, the Bio District, Ladder and Bloom, GNO Inc., the City of New Orleans, really bringing a diverse set of stakeholders together to really figure out from a national expert who can bring us perspective from multiple markets to really figure out how we can leverage the opportunity here in the biomedical corridor locally.
On tap for today is a discussion regarding the connectivity between new localism, which Bruce will describe, which is essentially a problem-solving practice and governing philosophy, and the innovation district, and that our success in the biomedical district will require the development of new norms of growth, governance, and most importantly, finance, particularly within the biomedical district, which I might add is also an opportunity zone. So if you look up there, you'll see the orange are the opportunity zones, the blue is the biomedical district, and the red is the proposed Spirit of Charity Innovation District. So that gives you an idea of how large our critical mass we have there, and therein lies the opportunity. So as a part of that, it's our challenge as a city to maximize the collaborative leadership of the district's anchor institutions and stakeholders, which are essentially on your brochure today, with a strong resolve to grow as a center of health innovation in the South.
And what you see in the geography of innovation is we have to win in all three phases of the game. We have to win in the political will, we have to win in the talent, and we really have to win in the financing. Ultimately, the cities that are going to win are going to win in those three phases of economic development. And we all know that New Orleans is a tremendous city. It is arguably one of the most iconic cities in the world.
We are thrilled to be the speaker sponsor here for today's Geography of Innovation conference. It's another example, as Quentin said, of New Orleanians, folks from our city and our region coming together to learn, to strategize, to innovate, to reimagine, to focus on creating jobs and tackling the shared challenges around opportunity that we face in this community. So as many of you know, about 6 weeks ago, we released the Spirit of Charity Innovation District Strategic Plan. This robust strategy was a result of so many of you all in this room and even more community members who participated. It's a roadmap to create a lot of jobs, to honor the history of the former Charity Hospital, and to create a model development strategy that will truly be equitable and inclusive for New Orleanians.
I want to put this into a broader frame, and I want to talk about Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, and Copenhagen, and their transformative growth, governance, and finance strategies, and then zoom it back to this district. I think that's more helpful, frankly, given where you are. So let's just put this as a proposition. Everything has changed, whether it's demographic, whether it's restructuring, whether it's the pace of innovation, whether it's the spatial geography of innovation, whether it's climate. This is an incredibly disruptive period. It is leading to enormous economic insecurity and cultural anxiety, and this is what we have. This is why we labeled the book, How Cities Can Thrive in the Age of Populism. This is the kind of response you get during these kinds of periods. This is the real structural shift in the world today, and this is the way you need to think about whether it's the bio district writ large, or Spirit of Charity writ small, or New Orleans, right? We are seeing the rise of the city-state. At the same time, whatever is happening with the rise of angry populism, the diminishment of the nation-state. And the reason for that is cities are the centers of innovation and productivity in the world. Because they have that special combination and concentration and agglomeration of anchor institutions, which you have, mature companies, startups, scale-ups, intermediaries, incubators, accelerators, investors, skills training, all in very small geographies. When you put this on steroids, you get economic opportunity. And I think the major thing to take away about your economic position right now is New Orleans is is set for a burst of advanced industry growth. And that's the way you create jobs that pay well with good benefits and have large fiscal effects. So you're a tourism economy, yes. You have other aspects of your economy, but cities succeed or fail depending on whether they're able to unlock their advanced economy. That's how you get to economic opportunity. You're a majority-minority city, right? That could be an enormous benefit for you, but you essentially have to have a growth strategy that enables more people to come along for the ride. You know, middle class by middle age or sooner. And if you really do light this bio district and spirit of charity district, that's sustainable development, right? The world needs sustainable development, and innovation districts, because they're in such small geographies, are ipso facto sustainable, right? We don't have the dispersion of sprawl and people and jobs and companies that we've had in the US for so long. So new localism posits that we're going through a period where problem solving and economy shaping and talent preparing does not just come down from on high. You know, problem solving mid-20th century was top down, led by the national government and led by specialized agencies. If you had a transportation problem, go to DOT, right? If you have an environmental problem, go to EPA. We're in a world where problem solving is bottom up, it's multi-sectoral, public, yes, but also private, civic, university, community, and interdisciplinary. If you have a transportation problem, the solution might be the location of housing, or it might be a tech solution, right? We're in a different world. Now, you wake up every day and you read about the president's tweets, and you would think, you know, what the White House does is going to run the country. That's not how America rocks and rolls, right? We are a distributed republic. And I think what you have the potential to do here, building off of market power and civic power, could be extraordinary, but we'll get to the focus of it. So new localism is this governing philosophy and practice for the 21st century. Name a problem, it's going to be solved bottom up, right? And again, it's a structural shift. It's not just because we elected this person or because of that person or this party or that party. This is a 21st century shift in a networked economy, networked society, to cities, because cities are networks. They're not governments, right? That's why cities are so powerful ultimately. So here's the part that I think will inform where you go with this district, but really more where you go with New Orleans writ large. These are three stories, three norms, three models. If you're in a nation-state world, you look for laws and rules. If you're in a city-state world, you look for norms and models. So these are three norms of growth, governance, and finance that are emerging in the country today or around the world that you need to pay attention to. How many people have been to Pittsburgh? Wow, okay. Beautiful city, gorgeous city. And this is the model for high road growth, which includes innovation district, but includes an intense focus and sustained investment in centers of excellence. And we'll talk about what that means for you. This is Pittsburgh in the 70s. You went to Pittsburgh. I used to go there as a child because my aunt lived in Steubenville, part of the steel supply chain. You would go to Pittsburgh. You could not breathe. Literally, you could not breathe. The sun, you know, the sky was orange, not blue. Okay? Overnight, lost all the steel jobs, tens of thousands. This was the beginning of the future of Pittsburgh, 3 Mile Island. Remember that? Okay, 3 Mile Island, small nuclear disaster near Harrisburg. Those were Pittsburgh corporations that owned that facility. They came up with some plans to clean it up, first assess the damage in the hundreds of millions. They didn't have the money to do that. So they went to this guy sitting on the top of that contraption. Red Whitaker, one of the first roboticists in the United States, and that was his children's crusade below him. They figured out a way to take flexible robots that they could maneuver and command, send them into the bowels of 3 Mile Island, figure out the damage, and figure out to clean it up. $1 million, not hundreds of millions, okay? Now, this is Oakland neighborhood in Pittsburgh. This is a naturally occurring innovation district. No one had to do anything, literally, because you had Carnegie Mellon, and if you fell out of bed in Carnegie Mellon, you were in Pitt, right? And if you fell out of bed in Pitt, you're in all these other incubators, accelerators, you know, all the rest of the stuff. Pittsburgh began to come back because they didn't look back. They looked forward. They basically said steel is not coming back. So what we need to take is Carnegie Mellon and Pitt and begin to invent the next generation technologies, the technologies of the future that basically back in the early 80s and 90s, they didn't even have names for. Now it's robotics, autonomous vehicles, machine learning, big data analytics, genomics. How do you think about your innovation district? There are 12 next generation technologies. Pittsburgh's leading 5 of them. There are 12. McKinsey did a report back in 2013, you can read it. In a relatively short period of time, these 12 technologies are going to go from the lab to prototyping to ultimate market adoption, ubiquitous adoption all over the world. If you're a place that is in one of these technologies, either at the invention stage or the deployment stage, you're going to have a 2-generation run of wealth and prosperity that has the potential to be inclusive if you upgrade the education and skills of your workforce. So Pittsburgh's in 5 of them. And that's not just because of Carnegie Mellon and Pitt, it's because business leaders, philanthropic leaders, university leaders, and yes, government at the local, state, and national level decided to create centers of excellence that were globally competitive, off of which research could be commercialized, right? Companies could start, companies could scale, mature companies could get better at what they do. This is a brutal competitive world. And Pittsburgh, without really thinking that they were taking the high road to an advanced economy, did it because they had this future-oriented investment strategy, right? And they bet and took risks. Now, you know, Pittsburgh's a little like you. It's a millennial city. Everyone wants to be there. You know, great bones, great architecture. It's got a feel, authentic feel that you all have. But here's the other piece. If you're GE, if you're Google, if you're Uber, if you're Amazon, if you're anyone, right, and you're in sophisticated technologies and next generation technologies, you're in Pittsburgh. Not because they're throwing tax abatements at you. This is not Amazon headquarter 2, because you need to be the secret sauce. At the end of the day, the most important thing to think about an innovation district is talent, smart, sophisticated people, faculty, students, entrepreneurs, right, who are in a niche of the economy that is truly authentic to you because of your anchor institutions and because of your centers of excellence. We'll come back to that because I think it's really critical not just to call something a biodistrict, but to animate it, right, to activate it off of what is your true distinctive niche. The city has to think like a system and act like an entrepreneur, right? Thinking like a system means if you're, you know, Pittsburgh, you're flat on your back, or you're New Orleans, and you're trying to sort of have a platform for growth, you got to think across multiple issues. Yes, economic development. Yes, workforce development. Yes, placemaking. Yes, entrepreneurial support. That's system thinking. It's not just silos, which is what specialized agencies do. And you have to act like an entrepreneur. You have to take risk. You have to fail. You have to be nimble. And you have to be cognizant of who else in the world is potentially in your space, right? You just can't declare something. You have to basically act with purpose and intentionality. So lessons from Pittsburgh for New Orleans. They went from being a rust belt to a brain belt, and the brain belts will win this century. They will win because talent will beget talent and capital will follow capital. So as you're thinking about this innovation district or New Orleans writ large, how do you become a brain belt, right? Historic legacy. Pittsburgh used to make things. They still make things. They're just different things. They're now robots, you know. Go to Robot Row in Lawrenceville and you'll see the next economy in these nondescript warehouses without really any shingles out there. But that's where the next economy is being invented, right? And philanthropy, both traditional philanthropy, like R.K. Mellon and Heinz and Hillman, but new philanthropy. There's a lot of wealth in the U.S. We don't have a capital problem. We have an organizing problem. We have to sort of channel wealth towards the future of our cities that have high returns of investment, yes, economically, yes, fiscally, but also socially. So that's the Pittsburgh story. Pittsburgh traveled the high road. They didn't look back. They invented the future. They took risk. We'll come back to what that means for New Orleans. How many people have been to Indianapolis? Okay, Indianapolis is a great city. In the mid-1970s, everyone had basically left for the suburbs, right? The streets rolled up at 5 o'clock, and this is basically what you did in downtown Indianapolis. A bunch of guys, I don't think women really were doing this, but guys came down with shotguns and were shooting at pigeons, right? I mean, this is what was the excitement in Indianapolis, right? Kurt Vonnegut, great American novelist, grew up in Indianapolis. That explains a lot, including the medication he was taking. But, he basically said that Indianapolis was a place that for 364 days you played miniature golf, and on the last day you went to the Speedway. This was a boring place, okay? What the political, business, civic, and university leadership said is we got to restore the core, okay? And what they did, in an area basically the size of the bio district, is they started building sports facilities because they thought we'll be the amateur sports capital of the world. This is a consumption economy play. They built a ton of facilities, and if you were on the way to the Olympics, except for the Moscow Olympics, you had to go through Indianapolis. That was the theory, right? Then they decided to steal the Baltimore Colts in the middle of the night. They literally sent all these trucks to Baltimore to bring the team to Indianapolis. And then they stole the NCAA from Kansas City. So Indianapolis got really good at stealing stuff, okay? They're like the John Dillinger of cities. I think he was from Indiana, actually. But more importantly, this is really critical for you. They created the Indiana Sports Corporation. And the Indiana Sports Corporation was a place where public, private, and civic leaders would sit together and decide which facilities to build and how to design, finance, and deliver them. And they would do that collaboratively. And that's why they became the amateur sports capital of the world and began to steal stuff. At some point, how much beer and hot dogs can you consume, right? This is not the high road economy. This is the consumption economy, the tourism economy to some extent. And so they decided to make the transition from basketball to biotech. They hired all the consultants and they figured out, hey, wait a second, we're central Indiana and we're really good at life sciences and we're really good at medical devices. I mean, that's what we're still a production state. So they created the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership. And private, civic, and university, the public works with this partnership, but doesn't sit on the partnership. 60 CEOs from corporations like Lilly, philanthropies like Lilly Endowment, and their universities. Only the principals can come. An enormous amount of private and civic capital backs this partnership. And what do? They invest in every aspect of life sciences and medical devices that you possibly can imagine. Today, the #1 exporter of life science products in the United States is California. #2, Indiana. You get what you pay for. You get what you pay for, not just in the public sector, R&D from NIH and, whatever we get from the military, et cetera, that reflects on life sciences. There's quite a bit. But private and civic and university investments at scale in a sustained way over niches that they're really good at, both in Indianapolis and then all over the state. I was in Notre Dame about 2 months ago. I went to see the head of the university and the investment committee and all the rest of it, and they said proudly, we're part of Central Indiana Corporate Partnership. I said, really? You're like Northeast Indiana? Well, CICP reached up to Northeast Indiana and said, we need Notre Dame as part of this because they're so good at IT, and health is health tech, right? So as we're thinking about bio, it's not just drug discovery, it's not just medical devices, it's the interplay of software, hardware, technology, and so forth. A lot of capital unlocked to do angel funding, seed funding, venture funding in companies that are emerging off the research in the Indiana universities. And then they decided, instead of waiting for the feds or waiting for the states, let's build our own biosciences research institute, and then let's go out and steal faculty from all over the world. They are now building an innovation district, right? right near downtown. It's called 16 Tech. It's on 70 acres of land that was owned by the water company. It's going to be run by really a private asset corporation as opposed to a public asset corporation. But they're thinking about where not maybe the startups, but the scale-up companies can go in a mashed up, livable, walkable, very connected, very wired place. Be an ecosystem rather than an ecosystem. Think about that for a second, right? This is the head of Lilly, head of Lilly Endowment, head of Roche Diagnostics, head of Notre Dame, right? These are like big players, right? They run big institutions. When they come into Central Indiana Corporate Partnership, to that meeting, they park the ego at the door. They're there to collaborate and make 2 + 2 = 5. Most American cities, 2 + 2 = 3. Everyone says they work together. They don't in this way. This is capitalized, this is resourced, this is intentional, this is purposeful, this is evidence-driven, this is measured. This is a different game. So as we talk about the bio district and the, this smaller portion here, we have to think about a different kind of network governance here, right? What they have perfected is the mechanics of collaboration. When you go and sit in CICP, they meet about 3 times a year, they meet to decide, not to discuss. This is not a legislative body. We're not sending it to the committee to bottle it up, right? They're making co-investments, right? And this is where the innovation district governance is going to go in the US. Europe will be harder, Asia will be harder, Latin America will be harder, but US will be network governance of districts deploying capital in very structured ways. They operate at the district level, 16 Tech, the city level, the metro level, the regional level, the state level. They're politically smart, but you don't join CICP just because of the politics. You join it because you fit into the ecosystem of life sciences and medical devices, right? And finally, they've organized private and civic wealth. They have figured out, both from the big companies, high net worth individuals, how to basically convince very wealthy corporations and individuals and philanthropies, this is high ROI, okay? Now, we have these opportunity zones now in the United States. It was discussed before. We're going to see the aggregation of probably about $100 billion of private capital that will then flow into opportunity zones. There'll be a gazillion transactions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Maybe the good, the bad, and the indictable, depending on which city you live in. We need to figure out a way for a place like New Orleans to begin to unlock local capital, because there's a lot of wealth here, a lot of wealth. Everyone talks about cities being broke. Maybe governments are, but cities are wealthy. Cities are the centers of our economy. They're the engines of the global economy. So how do you begin to have some intentionality and purpose? It could be around this district. The last story is Copenhagen. This is the most important story for you. It is the most important story for you, by far, because of the ownership of that bio district and because of the creation of this particular, what is essentially a potential public asset corporation. So how many people have been to Copenhagen? So fewer people, and you obviously must be cyclists or something, but it's 600,000 people in the city, about 2 million in the metro. It's a cycling nirvana, right? I mean, it wasn't, several decades ago, but now nearly 50%. And, you come out of your hotel room and these 5-year-olds are whipping by on their bikes, and it's very dangerous. Do not cycle if you're an American in Copenhagen. We're not up to it. The local government is very powerful. They have an enormous amount of resources and talent and capacity. 30 years ago, Copenhagen was flat on its back. 18% unemployment, fiscally bankrupt, manufacturing had left, right? And the harbor had moved to Malmo, Sweden. So the whole core of Copenhagen was dead. It was basically like an American city, right? In many respects. So they decided to come up. It's not important what they decided to do, but it's the mechanism for financing that's important. They decided they needed a big move, and they decided to build a 20th century transit system, a subway system. Billions of kroners. And they said to themselves, we cannot tax anyone to do this. We have to start thinking. So what did they do? They created a publicly owned, professionally managed corporation, right? A city and port development corporation. And what they did is they took all the land, the Oristad district between the airport and the downtown, which had been used by the military for training purposes, so it was completely empty, and then all the land around the harbor, all of it, which had been owned by the national government. They created this corporation, 55% ownership by the national government, or by the local government, 45% by the national, and they basically said, your job is to regenerate this district. Think about the bio district. Regenerate this area. And all the revenue from land sales and land leases will go to service the debt on that wonderful transit system we want to build. So, and we're not going to play politics here, right? The public will own this. The mayor will be the chair of the board, but no one can interfere with transactions because the transactions have to follow the market, right? And to a large extent, highest and best use of all those properties. Now, it's still Copenhagen, right? So there's inclusionary zoning, much more robust than here. Everything's got to be energy efficient. As they actually dug up the subway, or dug up the soil to build the subway, they took all that soil, they shipped it out to the North Haven, and they basically protected Copenhagen from rising sea levels. I mean, they're Danes, right? Very virtuous cycle. When I asked the head of the CEO of City and Port Development Corporation, what are you really doing out in the North Harbor? We're taking back the land that the Swedes took from us in 1640. Okay, so if you're in the fight with someone, maybe it's Spain or something, maybe that's a good play. They now have a beautiful transit system, not a kroner, not a dollar, not a euro. Think about this, all land sales, all land leases. This is a public asset corporation that is creating public wealth, right? And then using public wealth to invest in a major transformative project. Your project may not be a transit system. Maybe it's workforce housing. Maybe it's early childhood education. Maybe it's reducing health disparities. Maybe it's investment in startups and scale-ups. It doesn't really matter, all right, what the investment is, but it has to be something that's local, right, that is authentic, that feels like it's New Orleans, right? They're not there for the quick fix. They're there for the long haul. America is the land of short-termism, right? Quarterly statements for Wall Street, election cycles. We're in election cycles constantly. And we're selling off public assets for the quick fix, for the fast buck, usually to fill a budget gap somewhere. They're there for the long haul. This is a 7,500-year play in Copenhagen. Again, all built from the revenues of land sale and land leases. Think about your bio district. Think about Spirit of Charity. Think about the land. The public owns 60% of this district. Now, it's not the public in one unified entity. It's the state, it's the city, it's some state entity over here that no one knows the name of. I mean, it's a lot of different, America says we hate government, we love government. We have so much government, it's all these fragmented authorities and entities and so forth. You've got to think about, both the economic proposition of this innovation district, but also how to create value and capture value for the long haul, right? I mean, this has got to be thought through because there is no public asset corporation in the United States. This is not how we redevelop places because, again, we're operating off different things. 3 lessons from Copenhagen. Fundamental to this city, fundamental to this district, fundamental to Spirit of Charity. Transparency. In the United States, we know what governments owe. We don't know what they own. We don't know what they own, and we don't know the value of what they own. And I highly recommend the first thing you do as you're thinking about this district is to understand ownership patterns and understand current value, potential value, and what you could do with it. Second, they merged all these public entities. You actually have an entity right now. It was developed by the state legislature. This would be impossible to do in just about any state currently. So someone did something intelligent, about 14 or 15 years ago, a lot of powers, but that doesn't necessarily mean it will operate efficiently or effectively. I mean, one of my very strong recommendation is before anyone does anything, get a group of 3 or 5 people. I know this is a hard one. Go to Copenhagen. I mean, like, really understand how they operate. Because I guarantee you that will fundamentally change how you think about this public asset corporation going forward. Okay, maybe 10 or 15 people, but whatever. And here's the other thing, and this is really critical. We think about public-private as transactions, PPPs, public-private partnerships. They think of them as institutions within which transactions occur. And therein lies all the difference. Because when you're a publicly owned, professionally managed institution, insulated from political interference, you create value. And when you find a mechanism to recycle that value to service the debt on transit or invest in start, whatever it is, that's the gift that keeps on giving. So, the United States needs to understand this. You need to understand this. How do we create a nation of problem solvers? Minor problem. Every Pittsburgh, there are dozens of cities that are investing at scale in the consumption economy. The consumption economy is low wage. It does not build the middle class. It is critical from an amenity perspective, right? But the high road economy, the advanced economy, the technologically sophisticated economy, the STEM economy, the STEAM economy, that's success, particularly when you train and educate children and young adults so they can participate in it, right? Every Indianapolis, everyone in the US says we collaborate, we play well together, we love each other. Maybe, but there's not that many places that have structured collaborations backed by capital, backed by resources, so that when you meet to decide, not to discuss. There needs to be a way for your anchor institutions, right, and your business organizations, and yada, 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 to use the spirit of charity in the bio district to create a new kind of governance here, right, with the public sector. And for every Copenhagen, we say we're capitalists, but we don't understand what the public sector owns, and therefore we don't understand value, and therefore we allow value appreciation in our cities, particularly in the housing markets, right, to have wealth be privatized. I mean, people are making a lot of money in Copenhagen, and they're making a lot of money in Hamburg, but they're doing it in a way for reinvest. So here's 3 things for you to think about. And not just like it's a Tuesday, so here's what we're thinking. I'm saying with evidence, right, with data, with analytics that are both locally driven, but then globally sourced, right, globally comparative. What is your edge? Hardest question to answer, but everything derives from it. Just because it's called a biodistrict doesn't mean it is a biodistrict. I mean, I think you have something here. You have new hospitals, you have medical schools. You don't have the research prowess that Carnegie Mellon Pitt have, or Penn and Drexel and Jeff Medical in Philly, or WashU and Houston, Texas Medical Center. So we're in the US here, I mean, we're an advanced, sophisticated economy. So you may have a biodistrict, but you're not necessarily in that league. So you have to think about your niche. You have to think about what is it about this district that is healthcare oriented because of your anchors that really would enable the growth of companies and jobs that can be connected to disadvantaged people and places, right? That could be the healing economy. You could be the place that invents an economy that reduces health disparities. We got a lot of health disparities in the US. You could be a place that actually enables technologically sophisticated companies that can make real money, right, to have as their purpose reducing health disparities. That may be a niche for you. You clearly have a climate niche. Rising sea levels, I think you know something about that, right? I mean, you know something about disruptive weather. The Dutch, the Israelis, you might be in a small group that could engage on the climate side, that's actually part of bio and healthcare. We shouldn't be segmenting things. These sectors are all intersecting. So what's your edge? Number two, who's in charge? It's the United States. Everyone's in charge, right? I mean, you know, we don't ask permission, we ask forgiveness, right? And I would say that this network governance model has to be perfected here. You know, you've got to have public, private, and civic and universities sitting together, hospitals sitting together in a different kind of way if you're going to propel this district forward, and particularly Spirit of Charity as your first early move in that incredibly iconic transformational building, facility, right, and space. And last, where's your power? You have this bio district. It has all these state legislative powers. Now you need, in addition to, I know ULI was here, you do a place charrette, you need a financing charrette, right? You need to think through, given the powers they have, given the model out of Copenhagen, given your niche in the economy, given the real estate development that might occur here, whether City Hall moves, what happens to the library, how you become walkable, livable, you need capital. You need a blend of public, private, and civic capital, of debt, subsidy, and equity. You need a financing charrette. You can't just make this stuff up and do a deal here and a deal there, and then 5 years later, everyone will say, well, what happened? We didn't really do what we were supposed to do. So I think you are new localism in action in a completely, you know, in a country that has, you know, where Washington, D.C. is on a complete frolic and detour. Please do vote. But frankly, after the midterms, it's not like the federal government is going to change our lives. I mean, you're going to change your lives. You're going to change the trajectory of this place. And it's not like the state is suddenly going to bounce back into, you know, sort of efficiency and effectiveness and strategy and intentionality. This is the level that has to do this, and this is the area where it needs to be lit. So what's that mix? What's that network governance model that ultimately can unlock private and civic capital and create public wealth that can be reinvested for your citizenry? That's the new localism. But this is not, you don't need someone to say, here are the 9 steps for an innovation district, and here are the, bullshit. I mean, you know, to use a technical term. You need a different approach to governing and financing that is 21st century in form and design and execution. Thank you very much.
With, of course, this research center here, with UMC, with the VA, with Tulane, with LSU. I mean, we have 3 medical schools in the state, and 2 are in New Orleans. But then we have 8 colleges and universities as well, we have to play to our strengths. So the public assets we truly do have, and of course, the human assets as well. So now it's time, I think, to double down on these efforts, to leverage all of our assets. I have pulled a plug from Australia, the Australian government, when they say asset recycling. And basically looking at what you have in your own backyard and turning that map around and using those resources differently and leveraging them more appropriately to get where we know we want to be as a city. My administration is really focused on, through the lens, I look through the lens of public health. Everything touches public health, everything. And public health is not just about medicine. It's about a healthy economy and, of course, a healthy economic culture. And we're at the heart of it. We can do this. And I was reading yesterday with Tulane and hopefully working with them, as they are now, they putting $2.5 million into a study to determine if blight has an impact on public safety and the impacts on people and how that can change the dynamics of behavior. And I said, wow, they can give me that money. I can already tell you right now it has an impact. But the good news is that because we have, again, our universities, right, being able to study this and partner with government, not just to present a study, but to make some changes truly on the ground so that people can see the connectivity between their higher ed community to the businesses in their community, to, of course, the culture that we have, and even our largest industry, which is hospitality. But right now, it is time for us to, again, break down those barriers, break down silos, get the egos out of the way, and get to work. I know that we can do it. The timing is really real for us. And I'm so excited even for New Orleans to maintain, Fitch just gave us that rating, that A rating. That's a big deal because when you're talking about development, our bonding capacity matters. And so we still have $50 million in bonds that we hadn't sold since 16. So I wanted to make sure that bond rating was healthy so that we can activate those dollars immediately to begin to implement the visions that we have for the Bio Innovation District. So I have no doubt about it. We have all the assets we need. Of course, we can always use more, but what I'm saying, using what we have better. And also challenging the status quo. Because I believe New Orleans produces and drives the state of Louisiana. And we're in this together. But we can truly realize our vision if we are playing not only to our strengths, but ensuring that the revenues that are generated right here in the city of New Orleans is just shared more appropriately and equitably so we can truly realize this vision. So I want to say thank you so much for focusing on this. I'm looking forward to being from what has come out of this conference and basically for what Mr. Katz has been able to provide us with, those best practices and those evidence-based practices so that we can implement them in our vision and make them a reality right here in the city of New Orleans. So thank you again, and the way is in our front. I believe it. The time is now, so let's get to work.
Around this question of what's our edge, why is bio and healthcare a legacy opportunity for us? And what makes the biomedical district an innovation district?
Well, there we go.
Close.
Thank you. Basically, the bio district in New Orleans was an innovation district before even the term was defined. It was developed back in 2005 by a collaboration of economic development organizations in the city, including GNO Inc., including Chamber of Commerce, Business Council, Regional Planning Commission. Also included in the coalition was the presidents and chancellors of Tulane, LSU, Xavier, and Xavier, done in cooperation with the mayor's office. That's an edge, and it's unique. As Bruce Katz said, it's very difficult to get a state legislature to create something like this. And notice, it includes universities, business, and government employees and staff. So it is one of those collaborative elements that we could use to build. Of course, it's focused on advanced tech and bio. Why? Since World War II, the greatest increase in employment worldwide has been advanced tech. In our nation, the healthcare and healthcare research has grown from 5% of our GDP to 17%. It's expected in the next decade to grow to 20% of our GDP. So advanced tech and bio, that's what's we're trying to build on strength. Secondly, what are our assets and uniqueness? We have 3 academic health science research centers. Very unusual. Only less than 13 cities in the country have that. Basically, Tulane, LSU, and Xavier. A lot of times Xavier is not thought of as an academic health science research center, but it's number 2 in the nation among HBCUs and NIH, National Institute of Health Funding. And it's, of course, number 1 among all universities in terms of graduating, being the primary undergraduate source of MDs, life science PhDs, and Xavier serves 10,000 patients a year through his College of Pharmacy. Tulane, LSU, and Xavier bring in over $100 million in NIH funding a year, which is the gold medallion of research. So we're starting to think bio. Also, translating research into new technologies is a priority for NIH. Because these dollars come from out of state and they don't circulate within the state, they are estimated to have a $600 million impact, economic impact on our city. So how are biotech companies produced? By the academic health science research centers, which I see as our niche. As it turns out, our doctors and pharmacy faculty are superb tech transfer agents. They go from their research lab over their classes. They talk to their students about the research. They talk about potential applications. They then go to their clinics, and they are treating their patients, thinking again about their research and how it might apply and how it might work with their patients. They are tech transfer agents. So they go back to their labs, and they have a very different perspective. They're then able to take their research and potential technologies to their university patent offices, which help these faculty members get past patents, do licenses, and ultimately try to start new businesses. The other advanced tech assets I would mention are in addition to the patent offices, is the New Orleans Bioinnovation Center, which has been very helpful to the universities and others to provide incubators and business development activities in our city. I'll say a little bit more about that later, and organizations like Idea Village.
Thank you. I want to pitch to Michael and Ellen. So we saw in each one of those cities that it is important to build on a strong cluster and core, but that the innovation districts extend beyond just research, right? Can you guys talk about our edge? How do we leverage the other pieces and advantages that New Orleans has to drive this work?
Well, good morning and thanks everyone. I would say that our first asset and our biggest champion for this is Mayor Cantrell. So just having that leadership in place, who, if you've been in a meeting with her, you will have always heard breaking down silos, cross-pollinating the work. I call them cylinders of excellence because, people are doing great work in their own space. And so it's, moving across, and whether we break them down or build bridges across and to these cylinders of excellence, having, that political will around the leadership of your city to want to find creative and innovative ways to do this work. And for Mayor Cantrell, it is always in the back of her mind also with people first, and making sure that the people of New Orleans are ultimately going to benefit from all of the economic opportunity that is there. That all being said, we talked about our anchor institutions, 7 colleges and universities right here in the city of New Orleans, medical schools, research universities, the University of New Orleans, silver and blue, with the only planning school, the urban planning school in the southeast. We look at Xavier that Jean talked about, Tulane, and Loyola University. We think about not just the biotech pieces of this, but what do people need that's going to support, whether it's healthcare, technical innovations. We can do all of these things to talk about health disparities. People need case managers, they need care. There are other elements that contribute to reducing health disparities. And I think that our other colleges and universities are also there as resources to grow the workforce to supplement and complement whatever the advances that we're going to make in the biotech. I think that's one thing, and then certainly, who doesn't want to live in New Orleans? And so just the fact of New Orleans being New Orleans, we look at technology companies that have come to DXC. They could have gone to other places in Louisiana, but they're here, and they're here for many reasons, aside from the economics and the incentives that were provided to them. I could go on, but I'll let Michael pick this up.
Great. Thank you, Ellen. And maybe I'll just give some numbers about what I think our edge is. And I think what it comes down to, and these numbers kind of back up what we've been doing for the past 10 years, which is fortuitous, is that we're placing the right bets. And so I'll start with a recent piece that came out in Bloomberg that said the 2 industries that have the highest average salaries in the country are technology and healthcare. And what's this district about? It's about technology and healthcare. And then I'll go and I'll say, well, how are we doing in those industries? Over recent years, Greater New Orleans has been in the top 5 and frequently number 1 in job growth in both technology and in healthcare. So we are growing fastest in those areas that do create the most wealth, hello, Mayor, in the country. And then finally, Ashley, to your point about inclusive innovation, within technology, we just ran the recent numbers, and we are now number 5 in the country for African American participation in technology jobs, and number 7 for women holding technology jobs. And so that's inclusive innovation. And so you can talk qualitatively about all of these advantages that we have, but then when you actually look at the numbers, the good news is they actually back it up as well.
Good morning.
What potential do you see here in New Orleans?
Well, New Orleans is obviously one of the most unique cities in the world, and a lot of your growth is coming into this bio-district and spirit of charity area. It's the sort of natural trajectory of growth. You have some great bones here because of the hospitals, the medical schools, and a lot of the land is owned by the public sector. And that means that this district could leverage that, like Copenhagen has done in their harbor, like Hamburg has done near their downtown, for really substantial economic growth that works for more and more people.
What recommendations do you have for New Orleans to get the ball rolling?
Well, I think what you've got to declare is a particular kind of economic edge that might be around the healing economy, reducing health disparities. It might be around the climate economy because of rising sea levels. The bio-district and the spirit of charity could be really a platform for a new burst of entrepreneurial and economic energy in this city. And there's also a new federal tax incentive opportunity zones, which I think if you can get your arms around, you can attract both local and national capital to help spur this redevelopment.
Really, there are three big picture things. First, we are getting older, people are living longer. So really the sector which jobs are always going to be plentiful is really in health service delivery, bioinnovation, biotechnology. So this is really the sector that's a generational opportunity. Second, we have tremendous assets here locally in New Orleans. We're standing here in the Louisiana Cancer Research Center, one of the foremost partnerships between Tulane and LSU that's producing world-class research globally. And we also are one of only 17 U.S. cities with 2 medical schools. So really this is an opportunity for us to hear from a national expert and discuss locally how do we better leverage these assets to create more jobs and create more wealth locally.
Traditionally, when you think of this thriving biomedical district, people think of the immediate, assets, so the hospitals and the research entities and the universities and such. But we really need to think more about downstream. So there's a lot more activity that comes out of this. If you think about it, we have a very well-thriving international port. So all of these entities are probably producing in the billions in terms of revenue, and they need things like paper goods and environmental services and lab technicians, and there's so much additional economy that comes out of their enterprises.
We have learned over the decades the importance of proactive decision-making in economic development, moving from shipping to hospitality, and now the knowledge economy. And so our health sciences sector is what's going to get New Orleans to be a leading economy in this country.
We're very excited to be here to learn more from experts about this bioinnovation district and the potential and what that's going to unlock for us. But we see this as a huge economic development opportunity, a huge community development, workforce development opportunity. So a place where we can train residents to participate not only in construction and real estate development activities, but also to really be engaged and involved in workforce in the biotech and the biomedical industry.
Job density is actually the way that economic growth happens. There are job-creating sectors, and they're usually small, they're usually compact, they're usually connected, so that folks who might be in a tech field might be next door to a bioscience company, and the two of them get together for coffee and they invent a company that's going to take health and IT work to the next level in terms of creating a new entrepreneurial option. And so that's the kind of geography of innovation that we've seen around the country and want the Spirit of Charity District here in New Orleans to model itself after.
We need to make sure that the business community and the educational university community are working together. We need to make sure that we're investing money in bringing to New Orleans and to these institutions the best talent we possibly can in terms of research, particularly I think in terms of cancer research. And then we need to make sure that we're working with the the organizations that we already have to translate that research into new advanced technology businesses. We're doing that now. We need to do it even more, and we need to get the whole community focused in on that. That will increase the economy. That'll raise all the boats, I should say, and that's what this is all about.
For us to be the healthcare innovation center of the South, we have to be able to integrate the development plans of the various institutions, anchor institutions in the biomedical district. It's the very fact that they continue to grow that's providing a baseline for the potential development pipeline for projects that could be a part of the bio-innovation district as well as the opportunity zones.
Are you encouraged by what you've heard here today?
Very encouraged. I think, I don't want to say this is historic, but what you saw today was an amazing collaboration between the various institutions and stakeholders in the biomedical district. And with the mayor's support, this bodes well for the future of the biomedical district.
We have 2 medical schools, multiple hospitals, a $2.1 million collaborative hospital where we have our 2 medical schools practicing together. And when you couple that with the other schools in town like Delgado, who really trains so much of our workforce in New Orleans, we have this powerful, amazing ecosystem that we as a public-private entity really want to foster and grow and nurture so that we're creating STEM-related jobs for our Louisianians.
I'm very excited. I'm very encouraged. There's also a challenge. I mean, you can have great convenings, you can have great meetings, but ultimately it's what happens next. It's how do we move forward. And our organization, the New Orleans Business Alliance, is very focused on doing that. In fact, we have the only dedicated economic developer in the state, Jeanette Weiland, who is focused exclusively on bioinnovation. So we really want to be, with our other local partners, a serious catalyst in taking just not only the words today, but turning that into actions moving forward.
If people have questions like more information, what should they do?
If they have more information, they can go to www.nolaba.org or give us a call at area code 504-934-4500. And my email address is qmesser@nolaba.org.